A machine of impossible physics, the Sukhoi Su-57 Felon, hangs in the air, defying gravity in a maneuver known as Pugachev's Cobra. For decades, such demonstrations were the public face of Russian air power, a symbol of technological prowess and martial confidence, thrilling crowds at air shows worldwide. They projected an image of a hyper-advanced force ready for any challenge. But in the frozen pre-dawn hours of February 2022, when the spectacle of air shows gave way to the brutal reality of war, the Air Force that was supposed to shatter Ukrainian defenses and dominate the skies in 48 hours failed. Nearly 3 years into a grinding conflict, it is a shadow of its former self, fighting not for dominance, but for survival. How did one of the most feared air forces on the planet, a cornerstone of Russian military doctrine, find itself so broken, so bled, and so utterly humbled? The answers reveal a story not just of tactical miscalculation, but of a deep, systemic rot that had festered for years, hidden behind a veneer of strength. Before the invasion, the Russian Aerospace Forces, or VKS, were universally regarded as a titan. On paper, their strength was undeniable. Hundreds of modern, capable aircraft, outnumbering their Ukrainian counterparts many times over. Western intelligence agencies and military analysts alike predicted a swift, overwhelming air campaign. The consensus was that Ukraine's air defenses would be systematically dismantled within 72 hours, paving the way for a rapid, decisive victory on the ground. The expectation was a display of aerial shock and awe. But the war in the air, like the war on the ground, refused to follow the script. The first critical failure was not one of technology, but of doctrine and mind. Russia possessed the high-performance machines, but it fundamentally lacked the modern war-fighting philosophy to wield them. It was like owning a garage full of Formula One cars, but having only ever trained to drive them in a parade. This doctrinal flaw was rooted in Soviet-era thinking. The Russian Air Force was conceived primarily as flying artillery, a subordinate branch whose main purpose was to provide direct fire support to the army. It was never structured, trained, or equipped to fight for and achieve total air superiority as an independent strategic objective. Unlike Western air forces, which train for complex, multi-layered operations, the VKS was institutionally incapable of orchestrating them. Where a NATO mission might involve a synchronized package of dozens of aircraft, fighters for air-to-air combat, electronic warfare planes to jam enemy radar, dedicated strike aircraft for ground targets, and airborne command posts to coordinate the entire ballet of violence. The Russians sent their jets into hostile territory in ones and twos. These small, isolated sorties flew into a layered and determined Ukrainian air defense network without adequate protection, electronic countermeasures, or mutual support. They were picked off one by one. Compounding this was a critical deficit in the human element. The skill of a fighter pilot is a perishable one, maintained only through constant, rigorous training. Before the war, Russian pilots averaged between 100 and 120 flight hours per year. In stark contrast, their NATO counterparts live in the cockpit, flying between 180 and 240 hours annually. That gap represents thousands of hours of collective experience, muscle memory, and tactical proficiency that the VKS simply did not have when the shooting started. But the most visceral and undeniable problem was the catastrophic rate of attrition. Russia began to bleed aircraft at a pace that stunned observers and shattered its own operational planning. According to the open-source intelligence site Oryx, which meticulously documents visually confirmed losses, Russia has lost at least 141 military aircraft. This figure, based solely on photographic or video evidence, represents a staggering 10% of the VKS's entire pre-war combat fleet. Ukrainian officials, for their part, claimed to have downed more than 340 Russian aircraft by the start of 2024. The true number likely lies somewhere in that grim corridor, but the strategic impact is undeniable. Crucially, these were not old, expendable Soviet-era relics being sent to the scrapyard. Russia was losing its best, its most advanced, and its most expensive platforms. The Sukhoi Su-34 fullback, the VKS's premier strike fighter bomber, has suffered immensely, with at least 37 confirmed losses. Each Su-34 represents a $36 million investment. With a pre-war production capacity of only 6 new airframes per year, Russia has lost the equivalent of 6 full years of production. The losses of unique, high-value assets have been even more devastating. At least 2 Beriev A-50 mainstay airborne early warning and control aircraft, the flying eyes and brains of the entire Air Force, have been shot down. These aircraft, capable of detecting enemy fighters and missiles from hundreds of kilometers away, are the nerve center of any large-scale air operation. Before the war, Russia possessed only 9 of these vital platforms. Losing 2 is not a tactical setback, it is a strategic decapitation, blinding the VKS over vast sectors of the front. Ukraine's reach extended deep into Russia itself. In a daring series of operations, Ukrainian intelligence executed what it termed spiderweb, striking strategic airbases far from the front lines. Satellite imagery from Maxar Technologies confirmed the catastrophic results. At least 7 Tupolev Tu-95MS strategic bombers and 4 Tu-22M3s were destroyed or severely damaged on the ground. These are irreplaceable Cold War-era assets. They are no longer in production. Once lost, they are gone forever, diminishing Russia's strategic deterrent capability with each successful strike. Beyond the aircraft, shot down by missiles or destroyed on the ground, a second, more insidious war of attrition was consuming the Russian fleet. The war against physics and time. The remaining aircraft are being worn out at an alarming rate. An analysis by a prominent research and development organization revealed that Russian combat jets are flying 3 to 4 times more hours than their designated peacetime operational tempo. This is the mechanical equivalent of taking a car rated for 10,000 kilometers a year and forcing it to drive 40,000. Components fail, airframes crack, and engines burn out. This accelerated wear is exacerbated by tactical necessity. To evade Ukraine's increasingly sophisticated air defense radars, Russian pilots are forced to fly at extremely low altitudes, a flight profile that puts immense stress on an aircraft's structure and engines. It is like constantly redlining a car's engine. Its lifespan will inevitably be shortened. The research organization estimated that by the end of 2023, the VKS was operating at only 75% of its pre-war strength, with an astonishing 60 aircraft lost not to enemy fire, but to simple engine failure and mechanical breakdown. A Polish military source offered an even bleaker assessment in 2024, estimating that 45% of Russia's entire jet fleet is approaching the end of its service life and will require retirement in the coming years. This mechanical crisis is amplified by the crushing weight of Western sanctions, which have severed Russia's access to critical Western-made spare parts, microchips, and specialized materials essential for modern engine maintenance. The result is a grim paradox. More Russian planes are now grounded due to a lack of parts than are being shot down by Ukrainian missiles. This decay, however, began long before the first shots of the 2022 invasion were fired. The Russian aviation industry was hollowed out from within by a problem as old as power itself: corruption. In July 2024, a shocking discovery laid bare the depth of the rot. 5 of Russia's newest and most advanced Ilyushin Il-76 MD-90A military transport aircraft were abruptly taken out of service due to critical failures in their landing gear. With a total fleet of only 18 such planes, this single incident grounded more than a quarter of the nation's most modern heavy airlift capacity in the middle of a major war. The cause was not a simple manufacturing defect. It was cynical, calculated fraud. A Russian factory had procured cheap, low-quality industrial bearings, criminally forged the certification documents to make them appear as military-grade components and sold them to the government at a premium. Each aircraft, worth nearly 4 billion rubles, was crippled by a deliberate act of internal sabotage, sacrificing national security for profit. Faced with mounting losses, crippling maintenance issues, and an inability to operate safely over Ukrainian-held territory, the Russian Air Force was forced to abandon its ambitions and innovate out of desperation. It could no longer contest the skies, so it devised a way to strike from a distance using a crude, brutal, but terrifyingly effective weapon, the glide bomb. The system is a masterclass in battlefield adaptation. Engineers took old, plentiful, Soviet-era dumb bombs, from the 500-kilogram FAB-500 to the colossal 3-ton FAB-3000, and retrofitted them with a simple pop-out wing kit and a basic satellite navigation system. It is the tactical equivalent of turning a thrown rock into a guided missile. A Russian copy of the American JDAM concept, it allows a launch aircraft like the Su-34 to release the bomb from high altitude and at high speed, well outside the range of most Ukrainian frontline air defenses. The bomb then glides, unpowered, for 40 to 70 kilometers to its target. The effects are apocalyptic. The FAB-1500, carrying over 700 kilograms of high explosives, can obliterate fortified concrete bunkers, erase entire blocks of buildings, and leave behind craters 20 meters wide. While their accuracy is poor compared to Western munitions, missing by 30 meters or more, compared to a 5-meter margin for a JDAM, precision becomes irrelevant when the blast radius is that immense. These weapons proved decisive in the grinding battles for cities like Avdiivka, where Russian forces systematically leveled all defenses, bombing them into rubble until there was nothing left to defend. In the first few months of 2025 alone, Russia launched thousands of these glide bombs. Simultaneously, Russia streamlined its targeting process. At the war's start, the kill chain, the time from detecting a target to striking it, could take up to 4 hours. By 2023, this had changed. Russia flooded the battlefield with thousands of small reconnaissance drones, providing a constant, real-time view of Ukrainian positions. Now, when a drone spots a target, it can instantly relay the coordinates to a loitering Su-34, which can launch a glide bomb almost immediately. This fusion of constant surveillance with long-range, standoff firepower has created a ruthlessly efficient sensor-to-shooter loop. The threat is no longer just the bomb itself, but the vast, interconnected network that guides it. The brutal Russian experience in Ukraine has become a global case study, forcing a profound re-evaluation of modern air warfare. For Western nations, it served as a jarring wake-up call. The most vital lesson is that the fundamental principle of warfare has not changed. Control of the air remains paramount. Because neither side could achieve true air supremacy, the conflict devolved into a slow, bloody, attritional ground war reminiscent of World War I. For NATO, this confirms that air dominance is not a luxury, but the absolute prerequisite for any successful modern military campaign. The war also demonstrated the immense impact of massed, low-cost systems. The conceptual line between a cheap attack drone and a sophisticated missile is blurring. A long, high-intensity conflict is, at its core, a war of industrial production. The side that can build and replace weapons faster holds a decisive advantage. So, what is the future for the Russian Air Force? The damage it has suffered is generational. The losses are not just in airframes, but in the finite resource of experienced combat pilots and irreplaceable strategic assets like the A-50. This, combined with systemic corruption and suffocating sanctions, points toward an inevitable transformation. The most likely future for the VKS is one that trades sophistication for mass and brutality. There will be fewer advanced, fifth-generation jets like the Su-57. Instead, the force will be optimized for its one proven effective tactic: launching waves of devastating glide bombs from a safe distance. It will remain a dangerous and potent threat to its immediate neighbors, but its dream of rivaling the United States Air Force has been shattered, likely for decades to come. The story of the VKS in Ukraine is a triptych of failure, loss, and brutal adaptation. It entered the war under the illusion of being a modernized superpower, only to discover the deep-seated rot within its own foundations. It is a stark lesson for all nations. Advanced military hardware is meaningless without the doctrine, training, and institutional integrity to wield it. In the end, wars are decided not by machines, but by the people and the systems that guide them. This is Goba Military. Subscribe for real-time battlefield updates and strategic insights.